You know, as I listen to this, I think about the fact that I've served in the Senate for 46 years. During that time, we had 20 Supreme Court nominations, 16 confirmation hearings. And I can tell you right now, none looked anything like this. We're less than 2 weeks from Justice Ginsburg being laid to rest. Now, it's true, it's the responsibility of this committee to consider her replacement on the Supreme Court, but this isn't the way we should do it. We should not have had a nomination ceremony before Justice Ginsburg was even buried, while the nation was mourning her passing. We should not be holding a hearing just 16 days later when this committee has afforded itself 3 times as long to vet other modern nominees to our nation's highest court. We shouldn't be holding a hearing 3 weeks from a presidential election when millions of Americans have already voted. Not when doing so requires that literally half of the Senate goes back on their word. Think of that, my Republican colleagues. Literally half of the Senate had to break their word, contradicting every argument they made 4 years ago about the American people needing a voice during election year vacancies. We should not be holding this hearing when it's plainly unsafe to do so. 2 members of this committee are just now emerging from quarantine after testing positive for COVID. And when other members have declined to get tested, and the chairman has refused to implement a daily testing regime to keep members and staff and Judge Barrett and her family safe. And I might say we shouldn't be spending time on this when we're doing absolutely nothing to pass a much-needed COVID bill. Every senator on this committee knows in their heart this total break with precedent, break with their commitments is wrong. More than 212,000 Americans have died due to COVID, millions more are hurting. The virus is spiking again across the country, but Senate Republicans have nothing to say about that. The Senate is wearing blinders to the grim realities facing Americans. Instead of talking about COVID and doing something to help the American people, we're engaged in this mad rush to fill a Supreme Court vacancy on the eve of a presidential election. And why? I think the answer is painfully clear. With this vacancy, President Trump and Senate Republicans see the potential to wildly swing the balance of the court. They see the ability to take the courts from being independent to making them instead an arm of the far right in the Republican Party. The potential to accomplish through the courts what they failed to accomplish by votes in the halls of Congress. And the top of their hit list is the Affordable Care Act. It's no secret, it's no coincidence that Republicans are rushing to confirm Judge Barrett before the Supreme Court considers the latest Republican-led lawsuit to overturn the Affordable Care Act on November 10th. The president has even promised that any judge he nominates will overturn the Affordable Care Act. One member of this committee has promised he won't vote for a judge unless he has that commitment that the nominee will overturn the act. And for her part, Judge Barrett's writings have made it unequivocally clear she considers the act unconstitutional. In fact, overturning the Affordable Care Act has been perhaps the single most important policy objective of the Republican Party during the past decade. If Republicans are now successful, the results will be nothing short of catastrophic for the millions of Americans who depend upon its coverage and projections. These are real people. You may have, I believe you have in the committee, and I'm trying to get this so you can actually see it. This is Mary Naden Scott. She lives in Northfield, Vermont. That's just over the ridge from my home in Middlesex, Vermont. in her 20s. Mary was diagnosed with Friedreich's ataxia, a rare neurological disease. Like my wife, Marcel, and I apologize for, I know you have this picture in the committee room. Mary worked as a nurse, realizing she would soon no longer be able to pursue the career she loved. She asked the hospital to rotate her through different specialties so she could help more people in as many ways as possible. That's who she is. And now she's in a wheelchair. She can no longer practice nursing. She does everything she can to take care of her 2 children. I actually had the pleasure of calling one of her sons on his birthday last spring. And Mary, I know, attends their soccer games. She helps with their remote school. She even brought them to tour the Vermont State House. Now, Mary can do this because her medications and in-home care is paid for by her insurance. But she's worried, even with some state protections. She's worried what the Supreme Court case next month will mean for people with pre-existing conditions like her. For Mary, if she lost her insurance, her biggest worry is she'd lose her in-home support that allows her to continue living at home and taking care of her children. Now, she's a fighter. And when I think of what the Affordable Care Act means to millions of Americans, what's on the line with this nomination? I think of Mary. I think of what she's going to lose. And she's not the only one. You know, I talk to Vermonters all the time. Now think of another one, Martha Richards. She is an amazing, amazing woman. She's another Vermonter who reached out to my office concerned about the fate of the Medicaid expansion under the Affordable Care Act. Martha earns just over the minimum wage in Vermont. She works for the Vermont State Parks, and she's raised 2 kids on her own. Just look at this person. Soon after rolling now in the expanded Medicaid program, she began experiencing debilitating pain in her ear behind her eye. It led to a series of expensive medical tests, including 2 MRIs. It would cost $6,000 each. She shudders. The thought what would have happened without the Medicaid expansion. If it's discarded now, as the Republican attorneys general have requested a case before the Supreme Court, millions of Americans like Martha would be on their own. Now, I do not suggest that Judge Barrett personally desires these consequences or personally desires to devastate the lives of these 2 Vermonters. Far from it. But these are nonetheless the consequences if her stated views on the law prevail in the Supreme Court, and if Republicans are successful in filling this vacancy prior to November 10th. Well, then we know these views will almost certainly prevail. So that's what's at stake here. That's what weighs heavily on me as we begin these hearings. It also weighs heavily on the minds of the Vermonters I represent. I've heard from them often and loudly since Justice Ginsburg's passing. And they're scared, Judge Barrett. They're scared that your confirmation would rip from them the very health care protections the millions of Americans have fought to maintain, and which Congress has repeatedly rejected eliminating. They're scared that the clock will be turned back to a time when women had no right to control their own bodies, and when it was acceptable to discriminate against women in the workplace. They're scared that at a time when we are facing the perilous impacts of climate change, bedrock environmental protections are going to be eviscerated. And they're scared that your confirmation would result in the rolling back of voting rights, workers' rights, and the rights of the LGBTQ community to equal treatment. These aren't just thoughts. These are real-life implications of decisions made by the court. And a majority of Americans, like an overwhelming majority of my fellow Vermonters, don't support taking our country in that direction. Now, Republicans first announced their intention to fill Justice Ginsburg's seat just 1 hour after her death. From that moment, this process has been nothing but shameful. Worse, it will almost certainly lead to disastrous consequences for Americans. Justice Ginsburg, I am certain, would have dissented, and I will too, on behalf of Vermonters, on behalf of the integrity of the Senate, and on behalf of the majority of Americans who oppose this process. Thank you.